kept us a little bit over our original start time, our planned start time. We are going to have a small group with us today in the meeting, but hope that those of you who will be watching this later on YouTube will enjoy what happens during the meeting as much as we do, or maybe even more. All right, I'll take a moment to set up screen sharing if I can and get to the agenda. A window and Firefox. I'm sharing my Firefox screen, and in the situation of focus, oops, sorry. I've goofed myself up. Yeah, that's better. Now I can look at the faces on screen while we all share the agenda page, which offers an introductory slide talk that we only use in the event of newcomers, and of the ones present in today's meeting, I don't believe we count as newcomers to this group. We're all newcomers at some level using computers, but not as members of the NatickFOSS user group. So we'll skip that again. And we'll move to the current set of news items. Fedora 41 has decided that it is going to not automatically install the X11 server for doing screen display. It's going to use GNOME as it has in the past, but is only going to use the newer, more suitable for modern hardware Wayland software that provides the desktop experience for GNOME and for all the other desktop flavors that are out there, like KDE's Plasma and the KXFE, among others. And 41 will be the first time that the X11 is not immediately a part of your system. You can still add X11 if you need it, but within Wayland, X11 as a display server includes an X Wayland that does most of the same things that the original X11.org display server did. And if you need a refresher on what Wayland is and why it matters, this link from the KDE people will offer you a fairly complete explanation of what it is and why it is. And the big deal is that for the most part, X11, the thing that is being replaced by Wayland, is effectively dead, meaning there's not enough maintenance going on to improve its capacities, because the effort has been moved over to the Wayland compositor, and the system works better. And we did not want X to disappear because it's been very helpful for much of the history of Linux and user experience. But without constant maintenance and improvement, software just isn't worth continuing to use. So Wayland is on the rise while X11 is fading. And KDE is one of those, excuse me, fairly important, Fedora is one of the more important kind of desktop distributors, and their move to drop X11 is a move that most other distributors of desktop software will follow either soon or not so soon, but will happen, I'm sure, for almost everybody. I'm currently still using an older KDE version from Ubuntu's 22.04 long-term release. We're not quite to the point where I'm switching over to the 24.4 because the distribution system suggests waiting until the first point upgrade before long-term users switch. And that comes usually sometime in later August. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing whether I get a lot of improvements, including perhaps the majority switch to using Wayland instead. I think some of you are actually using Wayland on a regular basis already. Anybody have comments about that?
I've been using Wayland almost exclusively for several years.
And obviously you are not unhappy or you'd be complaining about it.
That's true.
Bob, how about your experience?
My experience with Wayland was during its earlier development with Ubuntu 20.04 LTS. And especially in the Unity desktop environment, there was not good desktop integration, particularly not if you used the GNOME desktop. If you used Unity or GNOME, there were issues with a philosophy that people didn't want to put icons on their desktops. And you could not easily create a desktop launcher and move it over to the Unity sidebar and you move it to the dash. There still are integration issues with containerized packaging like Snap and the others, app images, and I'm missing one other of the package ones that Fedora uses heavily.
Flatpak.
Flatpak has sometimes, with some apps, difficulty integrating into either Unity or GNOME. So Wayland didn't help that. Today, Wayland is much better, and the kernel accommodates it better. But there is a problem with the Ubuntu 24.04 that initially was said to be a bug. And that is that it would not, through the Ubuntu software GUI, it would not install deb packages, only snaps. This was corrected recently, so the .1 should be okay on that. But of course, if you're not a new user, you know how to install through the command line, and you know how to use dpackage, and you know how to install gdebi, which works perfectly well. And you know how to install the Synaptic Package Manager itself. Trouble is, Ubuntu substitutes in Synaptic and apt, it substitutes snaps for debs in many cases. So anyway, the 24.04 kernel in the .1, we're hoping some of these bugs have been fixed.
Very clear explanation. Thank you. Your experience is always helpful. Okay. And Nick and Jill, do you have any insights that you've shared with clients about the switchover? You're muted at the moment. Dick, you're muted. We can't hear you.
On mine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Am I coming through?
Yes.
Good. We've switched across to Linux Mint, I think near the beginning of the year. And we've been awaiting the major version was just released, I think a week ago or so. And we've been working with the beta, and you can do that either way, also Wayland or X11. And I've been rather waiting for a couple of my favorite applications to catch up so they can run smoothly in Wayland. So I've been bouncing back and forth between and waiting for what I thought would be another week or two after the release date. So maybe today, maybe a week later, but probably in that region. So color me a little baffled as of today as to what's the best solution, but I think it'll be a no-brainer very shortly.
With Fedora making the switch, it sounds as if that may turn out to be the direction everybody takes. Okay, back to the agenda, unless somebody objects. I'm seeing that the EU has decided that they are going to not fund free and open source software in their area-wide funding, which apparently is causing some concern among the European countries who have a lot of the development of free and open source software. Those countries are going to have to either pick up the slack and put in their own funding, or maybe those projects will have to begin chasing money on their own. Federal funding at the EU level was a good deal, I guess. So we can hope to hear more good news out of that area. And I suggest you follow that link in case you need more information. I don't have a sense that there's a decision of how to solve the matter yet. But at the same time, Ed has offered us this link that says Switzerland is now requiring that all government software be open source. Microsoft must be yet again grinding its teeth collectively to find out how they can get around this government requirement for one of the most important financial centers of the world. Because if finance heads in the direction of open source software, Microsoft may find a diminishing return from it. Ed, do you have any insights to what this talks about? You are currently muted, by the way.
Okay. No, that was an article I found. I looked pretty interesting. I'm sure security reasons are part of it. Maybe it's something that more governments around the world need to do. And of course, Microsoft isn't going to like that, but
C'est la vie, right?
Yep, exactly.
That's been the Microsoft wish for many of us who don't use Microsoft. Well, you don't. C'est la vie. We'll see what we can do to embed you in our system anyway. I see Bob has told us that Austria is requiring FOSS usage as well, and that's
No,
very exciting.
they did require it a few years back. They tried to switch. Then they had a lot of backlash and they backed off. Now they don't require it.
Boo. Massachusetts once had an education head who wanted to make sure that everybody could have open source software for the benefits that it offered to education. And there was such I'm not sure who would be making the backlash. It certainly wasn't the community at large, but some interests knocked back that plan completely. No, 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 we must rely on the corporate body. And as a result, open office at the time was not a welcome guest in most schools, among many other open source software. We were forced at the government level to report all of our student data by way of a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. That was it. No other way. Couldn't do it in a database, couldn't do it any other method. Dick, I see your finger pointing up. Need the microphone on?
1, 2, is it?
Yes.
Good. I read in passing, may find the link, may not, that Microsoft is significantly upping its efforts in open source Linux. And how they're going to manage that internally must be a very interesting discussion. So maybe by next month we'll hear more. I think they are, in some part, contributing to Linux. And I noted they contributed quite a bit to Trump. So maybe this is just one more way to keep on the good side of everybody. I don't know. But maybe it's a significant change. I'll bet on the balance. They're also looking at how they can monetize some portions of open source. Well, I think that's going to be the action area on that little news brief that I got. Does anyone know more about that?
One thing I do know is that the Microsoft cloud initiatives like Azure are using systems where a lot of the backend systems are actually running Linux already.
Mm-hmm.
And they need compatibility. And they don't need the kinds of crashes that they just had, the kinds of outages.
Mm-hmm.
And they're finding out that Linux is more compatible with Linux than Windows is with Linux. It's as simple as that.
I wonder why.
Well, Azure is built pretty much on Linux.
The web. It's supposedly an open place, and Linux as its main underpinning helps to support that open space and that openness. We'll see what happens. I thought the next article, as we cross from FOSS News to FOSS History, was an intriguing article about some Unix events that were in part a thing that just couldn't make money, but was a good effort before Linux became the powerhouse that it has turned into. Several different companies wanted to be able to run a version of of Unix, and Dell spent quite a bit of effort developing its version to run on Dell equipment, and I guess it did okay. But if you want to study a little bit of a dead end, this is one of those interesting articles that I would recommend you follow the link to see.
I'd like to comment a little bit on that. Being a Unix user going way back, Unix was licensed through AT&T, and it was developed certainly by Bell Labs, and the way it charged licensed people, it was by the number of users. And a lot of the early Unix systems that came out for PCs, like Phoenix with a V, a couple of others that were PC based, essentially were 2-user systems, because that was the only pricing that would be affordable. But even that, the Linux PCs were quite expensive at the time until the whole I'm trying to remember the name of the company that actually had the suit. But anyway, there was a big lawsuit. Actually, it started out against IBM.
Was that SCO?
Yeah, Santa Cruz Operation. Santa Cruz Operation initially was kind of a spin-off of Microsoft. And I actually used SCO Unix for a while because we had it licensed to the Boston Computer Society. But SCO was actually bought by Caldera, which was a Linux distribution. And it's that company that actually sued. The original SCO actually changed its name. I forget offhand the name. I have in my history, but I followed the lawsuit for a long time. And they sued Novell, which actually ended up buying Unix from AT&T. And Novell actually says, well, we're going to essentially forgive the patent violation. It got very complicated.
Mm.
Eventually, Novell won their suit. In any
The
case,
money ran out at the end.
But it's those suits that actually made OpenBSD and Linux possible, because a lot of people were afraid to use Unix. But it also, Caldera actually threatened to sue its end users for using Linux. So that was a whole stupid thing, but I don't want to get into it. It gets very, very complicated.
Oh, yes. Thank you, though. All these history topics are very interesting, but also very complicated at some level. So we look at them and are glad that most of them are behind us, with plenty of room for the future. Okay, there has been a GNOME and KDE Plasma comparison done by the Linux Experiment. A fellow named Nick offers us a weekly video on YouTube, and if you have any interest in making a case for one or the other, please watch this several minute long video. We won't do it here in the meeting because that tends to make our recording choppy. But moving from that to another option as opposed to just GNOME or the KDE Plasma, we have Dick Miller's ready to talk about Linux Mint 22, which was just released on July the 25th. Any good comments to share with us, Dick?
Yes, indeed. And some to come as well. We switched from a version of Ubuntu developed by a surprisingly young fellow in India. Excellent English, no problems at all on that count, and it was very good. That's Ubuntu Unity, and I'd recommend it. But we have a lot of users we deal with and people we just recommend it to, and we were very impressed with the prior release of Linux Mint, which was 21.3. And 22 is a major release, one of those ones that comes only every so many years. And if I recall correctly, they'll be supporting it, this release, 22, for 9 years. I have never heard that number before. So if you're the kind of person or big corporation that doesn't want to be upgrading all the time and adjusting users to the changes, that's a big come on. A big come on for us was how simple it looked. How when you first loaded it, it opened up with a lovely little introduction with plenty of links to other places. If you had questions about some aspects, it kind of sold itself to you for no cost in a very effective way for people who want more hand-holding in their computer rather than when it's a good time to talk to somebody else. And we liked it a lot for that. Also, its general look, its ability to adjust to what you wish it looked like, very flexible, with easy tools for doing that, and plenty of examples, or just a whole new set of wallpaper that I thought was stunningly good. We work on unusually high-res computers. And all the new wallpaper is high-res, and typically 4K or better. And that means you can hook up your new giant flat screen TV to your computer and take advantage of that big size for a lot of people to look at once. A lot of reasons we just thought it was in gear for where we want to take people so they don't have to come to us all the time. And we've been very pleased with 21.3. We used the beta of the new one for quite a while and made a few questions and suggestions that smoothed a few items. We're very happy with it, except, as someone said earlier, it's often wise to wait for the 0.1 version of a major new release. And we're finding a couple of our favorite programs that aren't in their distribution list. They have a huge distribution list of programs. You just tap and you've got it. And they run well. They're the ones they've been beta testing. So others are catching up, and it's just my love for a few special ones. I think the one I was having the most confusion over was SeaMonkey Composer. Talk about 9 years of continuing support. SeaMonkey is from back when. There was few other things before that, but basically for the most part, LibreOffice has displaced it. And LibreOffice runs fine on the new Linux Mint 22. So trade-offs, trade-offs. I have a few tricks I like from the old tool, and I hope it'll be running soon. But if not, I too can adjust. So we'll see. I'll report next month on how that went.
I also have a comment on it. One of the reasons we went to Linux Mint was the brouhaha with snaps in Ubuntu and Ubuntu Unity. And it turns out that when you install an application in Linux Mint, if there's a system version and a snap version, it will ask you when you say install it, which one you would prefer. And because we have a separate partition for our data, which a lot of the snaps ban you from getting into, and we need to get into it for obvious reasons, we have been very happy with that aspect of Linux Mint.
They seem to be steering a good course. They're a major player now, very popular, and I just think they're going to get the attention that it deserves. So we shall see. But it's easy enough to try. You can run it alongside what you're running. You can just click the link that I provided already, and you can either pop it aboard or look at someone else running it or read all the comments from Linux Mint and from comments about it from outside. It weighed in well. So I think you ought to give it a look. It's going to be around. By the way, Ubuntu Unity is obviously built on Ubuntu. It's not that easy to say that for Linux Mint. Linux Mint comes in, I think, 3 or 4 main flavors. We're using Linux Mint Cinnamon version 22. And it's Ubuntu 22.04 brought forward. So you know what that means. But they have other versions that I believe look more like Fedora, and I'm trying to remember which other main spin. Not quite sure. And I think I saw SUSE in there, which I don't see much anymore, as a beta option, maybe. When you go online, you'll see. I'm talking about Cinnamon, and it was an easy move across on just about everything except where the buttons are on the screen, which you can set up to look like about anything you can imagine. I've set up 3 different panels, all along the bottom and all small. It gives me a lot of screen to use for everything else. And I like it that way, but it's one of many options. Take a look. It's got ideas that'll be showing up in the other ones too. Let's see. And I wanted to mention that Ubuntu, in turn, is built on Debian, one of the 3 main flavors at this point, and same for Linux Mint. Same heritage on the cinnamon flavor, and you have choices. I think that's it.
Thank you. And Bob, you use Linux Mint Debian edition, is that correct?
Yes. With Linux Mint, by default, the Snap framework is not even installed. So you don't have the risk of having the Snap issues. However, there was a question raised in the Mint community. What if things started going over to subscription or a 2-tiered system in Ubuntu? And what if this means that Mint is no longer able to access all the Ubuntu stuff that it used to be able to? And the answer was, well, we better be building something that's more based on pure Debian. and does not have Ubuntu dependencies. And so that's what they've been doing, and I've been following along with that by using Linux Mint Debian Edition as my daily driver. I don't like some of the things that Canonical has done with mainline Ubuntu, but those things don't show up in Mint Cinnamon. So Mint Cinnamon, I think, is good for new users. They will find it familiar, but they will also find there's the same kind of support that there is for Ubuntu. There's a Linux Mint community. The Debian edition doesn't have as much support, and there are some things missing from the Debian repo that are in the Ubuntu repo, and Mint has some of those. So I would say only go over to Debian if you really think that terrible things are happening with Ubuntu. And most people are not that fanatical. And also, Debian is more conservative. So it will get Wayland a little bit later. It will get the 2404 kernel a little bit later than Mint.
And from the other side of the camp, Jerry, you probably will say, of all these things, Fedora's the best anyway, right?
Well, I go back to the install fest. I had a Mint user one time. He had a problem, and we installed it correctly, but there was a problem because it had a Broadcom Wi-Fi. And my solution there was to go to Ubuntu and get the Broadcom fix that Ubuntu published that nobody else had. And that solved it. But I found that Mint was a very good addition. So I'm not going to say any bad things about it. And I like the fact that they did have Cinnamon and that other desktop. I'm not going to say anything bad about Mint. It was a decent release.
Very diplomatic. Thank you. We do not subscribe to the flame wars. Some places do. Okay. Fuchsia, speaking of software that may or may not become something, is apparently a possible replacement with not the desktop in mind, but a replacement for Android, mostly on portable equipment, cell phones and the like. Jerry, I think you had this item as a
I don't know how I got on that, but I can discuss it a little bit. From my experience, Google has had a number of operating systems in their back end, in their development for years. We had the guy that was a Chrome OS guy years ago at the BLU meeting. The problem with supporting an operating system, whether it be for Android, whether it be for desktop PCs, is very expensive. You need people to develop it and update it. And I think it'll never really get into Android, basically because the cost of maintaining Linux with Java on top of it is a pretty low cost. And I don't think that Google wants to pass that cost on to the phones. It'll make the phones too expensive. Yeah, so I really don't think Fuchsia is really going to go anywhere. But certainly a lot of the development that goes into those might end up going into Linux.
Do you think do you think there's any room for the Fuchsia as an embedded system, operating system, or is that another sphere altogether, meaning smartwatches and
It
house
could
hubs
be.
and things?
Yeah, I don't think it could very well go, because I don't know all that much about it. I don't know how my name got on this. I think we had a discussion online or
Maybe.
something about it. But I don't really think that it's going to be adopted anywhere in the mainstream. But as an embedded OS, certainly, I think it would be pretty good for Google Assistant and stuff like that.
Well, time will tell. Certainly a pretty color name anyway. All right. Hardware. The top item of our hardware list is really not something you or I probably can do much about, but there's a type of battery that is a lithium ferric or ferrous, meaning lithium and iron instead of lithium ion batteries. The various chemicals, lithium ion phosphate.
Yep.
Excuse me, iron, not ion. If I can mispronounce it badly twice. 51% cost drop. Ooh, 53 cents, $53 per kilowatt hour for making or using the batteries, I guess. And what happens in China from a technological perspective often has a huge spillover effect to the rest of the world because of the size of their economy built around using storage of the solar power development that's rampant over there. It may turn out that there are finally batteries that are capable of running that large scale overnight storage that is necessary for solar power to really have an impact beyond what it already does in our world economy. So I thought this was a good article to be paying some attention to as we go forward.
Yeah, I'd like to mention that for the past several years, the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y standard range have been using LFP batteries. LFP has it is a lower price. It is a lower energy density, but it also is not prone to thermal runaway that you get when you drive a Chevy Bolt. It's not prone to catching fire, and they actually recommend you can charge up to 100% frequently. But LFP, there's a new CATL, which is the main manufacturer. CATL has a new version, which is LMFP, that adds manganese to the mix. And I think they're getting a lot better energy densities. But I think that for the next few years, you're going to see LFP batteries more prevalent in EVs, and that's going to drive the price down significantly. But also, it seems like solid state batteries, which is a holy grail of batteries, might start getting into the mainstream. You're not going to see solid state batteries in your car for at least 4 or 5 years. Anyway, 2027 is a date for one of them. But solid state's actually the holy grail And there are actually a couple of companies that are involved in that, and there are some products out there today that actually have solid state batteries. Whether they can get the prices down in solid state to get them into production. Toyota is seemingly planning to put their solid state batteries in their higher end cars like Lexus in 2027, which is where I got the number from. But Toyota has been talking about solid state batteries for years. So I can't believe what they say.
Huh.
But the LFP certainly is real. It is not your mainstream battery at the moment, mainly because it's still lithium ion. So it's not really a whole new chemistry. The basic thing with batteries is your chemistries in both the cathode and the anode, and that's what they're really working on to get all those chemistries correct. And so there are many different chemistries, and I saw an article today that Tesla with a new 4680 battery is finally got that straightened out and got it into full mass production.
Look at this one, we can see people.
What'd you say, Dick?
I'm not sure that was for us.
Yeah. Okay. But I read a lot about batteries and stuff like that. And Tesla has been developing their own batteries, but they also buy batteries directly from CATL and also from LG and Panasonic.
Cool. Is that a hand up, Dick?
Is first of all, we drive a Chevy Bolt EV. Love it. Very interested in dropping prices even further, which this may lead to. Dropping the weight of the battery will result in dragging around less weight of a car, and there might be interesting trade-offs there. Or maybe twice as much of this material will build a battery with double the range, for instance. Our range is fairly close to 300 miles. And if there's a charger handy where you end up, that's fine for almost everything we do. But there often isn't. Often the charger has to be a delay along the way. Faster charging is another parameter that comes into play with that. So I'm very fascinated as what might be around the bend on these wonderful cars to drive. I also wanted to ask Jerry to comment a little further, or anyone else, on the prior topic. Jerry mentioned some promising contender OSs to take on Android, but they keep promising and not delivering. How about the several Linux projects that will fit on a smartphone and do those jobs? Anybody know if there's been significant progress?
I don't. I haven't seen any, but with the popularity of the Android, which is built on Linux, and I think Linux provides a lot of the operating system support, but a lot of the user interface is done through Java.
And I'll comment a little more on that with some examples from our new phone shortly.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, but I've been using Android now since it was first available at AT&T. Bob?
There is a new revival of Lomiri, which was based on Unity, as Ubuntu Touch, which is for mobile devices.
Is it up and
It is, I think, still in a Kickstarter phase. So it's still experimental.
okay? Thanks.
Okay, we have lots to keep our eye on in that area, apparently. Hardware of 3D printed rocket is not all that big a deal, except that it's an open hardware product that you can actually buy if you're interested in model rocketry. This is not a commercial rocket. It's designed for use at home, and you can buy the complete kit or do much of the work yourself at home if you have a 3D printer. It's stored on GitHub if you're interested in finding out more about it. A person or a concern called Concrete Dog has developed this and has done a pretty good job of providing a lot of information about how you do it. What interested me was the license, that it's a CERN open hardware license that is like FOSS as a system of licensing, but for hardware and not software. But that by itself was the reason that I thought I would mention it, not because most of you are going to want to build model rockets.
Important.
I hear some hands up.
Yes.
Yeah, I put my hand up.
Okay.
I'm wondering, I don't know what the capabilities of model rockets are, but I'm envisioning the Ukrainians building a bunch of them.
I have a feeling these are intended for science fair project sort of work at a school level, that a person is building something that will be shot off with the equivalent of an M80 firecracker, but as a rocket engine version of that. It's a bit bigger than a thumb. We had a couple of model rocketry groups at our school, the middle school, King Philip, and they were shot out over our field of play in the back. It was a lot of fun, but not commercial in any way. Now, I'm sure that a metallic version of this sort of thing could be built the way Robert Goddard did back in the early stages of rocketry development. His might be more suitable for eventual use as a weapon, but these are, up in the air where you can still see them, and then they come down on a self-deployed little napkin-sized parachute.
Too bad.
Well, you can 3D print guns.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Theoretically, they can be passed through customs, unfortunately, as well, without anybody knowing they're there. Boo. Not particularly a topic of concern for our NatickFOSS group so much as the ability to talk, in my opinion anyway, about hardware licensing that is open source and open for study and review in the same way most open source licenses are. Okay, Dick, this was your first item that you wanted added, this contrary to online information.
Yes.
Something about a new track phone.
Well, my example is one specific phone and through a track phone account. but the topic is much more generic and kind of fits in with the Android discussion we were just having and alternatives. And let me see if I can fire one up. Has something ready to go, honest. I'll discuss that later. Anyway, the phone's a nice one. This is a sticker that was covering the lenses. You see it okay? Yes.
Yep.
Good. Thanks, Joe. And it's your average middle class of smartphone design. Comes from Motorola. Motorola took last year's $300 most popular middle of the line design they had. They added a few features and dropped the price to $200. I'm particularly interested in surprisingly good audio from it, even before you hook it to a different speaker, and surprisingly good, even sharper photos than I've already been sharing plenty of, which are very sharp. And I take those photos, put them into Linux, and process them with Photox, which I've talked about elsewhere. And the results are stunning. This is better. Does the old tricks and more. And so talking about the one phone for the moment, you can buy it for 200. I think you can find it online and maybe in some local stores for 180, maybe 150 on a quick sale.
Unlocked.
Unlocked, which means you can take it to any carrier. However, most people like their carrier because they already ran through that experiment. They want to stay with the carrier. If you're willing to stay with the same carrier and just bring in a new phone on your account, then the price changes radically. We just added two of these at the cost of $70 per phone. Same phone, but locked to track phone.
But it is a discount from the standard price for it was $100.
If you go to track phone, they'll mail you one and it will cost $100. Same deal, different price. If you go to Best Buy, they might have a deal. If you go to various places, one store near us is Target in Framingham. They've got from a bunch of other stores around Massachusetts and beyond. And a week ago, I was getting ready to buy them, and Target looked like you couldn't buy them from Target. But for $70, you could have Target order them for you to be delivered by mail, not from Target, presumably from TrackPhone, but I don't know that. That's the one flavor. I found out something very different when we went in to just look at the unlocked one to see more about the phone itself. And to my surprise, right across from the cash register in the phone department, a locked glass case down low, and in it, this phone ready to take home on the track phone deal. It was one of about 8 flavors they had in that one box, in that one set of 2 shelves. Not all for track phone and not all this phone. It's a generic argument that if you're willing to stick with your current provider or buy into a new one and stop your current one, much, much cheaper than buying an unlocked one. Can they be unlocked? I'm told they can, but no place I talked to knew how to do it. The various stores and such. So conceive if you bring one into a new provider, they may do that. So my big news is two items. One is you can buy them for a hell of a lot cheaper, and there's wonderful ones out there this year. You can buy last year's version of this unlocked for $100. But this version has significant new good features they added in. So I've given you its name. I've given.
Live stream is on.
Thank you, Dennis.
Good. I
Bill?
will go back to work. My main point on the target part of the discussion is they carry a lot of different accounts, and you don't have to buy the one I want to buy. You can buy the most expensive end of the line, a cheaper end of the line. I think it starts at $40 to buy the phone for the bottom end good phone from Motorola, for example. But you've got all those choices. The difference to the whole story, when you look at the link I provided, is if you look hard, you'll see where it says it's not available for pickup. And it's not available for Target to mail to you. And it's not available any other way from the look of it. Wrong. If you just go in after you decide you like it from the online description, you've got a stack of them you can buy straight out of there. Give them a credit card. And we returned one today. And the fine print on the sales slip said they may not refund the portion that was a discount. Well, it's $30 less than it is a track phone. They didn't ask any questions. They just returned it in a heartbeat. It was having trouble hooking up, where the second one had no troubles hooking up. And I came home yesterday with a new one. It had no trouble hooking up, and I could copy my data from the one I returned today. So then I was ready to return it. No questions asked, full return. You won't read that easily on the link, but I found it out in the store. So it might serve for a lot of different levels of interest. That's it. I'll answer questions now or later, or you can come play with mine if you want to in Natick. That's about it. Any
Go ahead, Ed.
questions?
Yeah, is it better than a Samsung?
They did cover at Target. They do have Samsung. Yes.
Oh, he said,
And
is it better than Samsung?
oh, this one, there's differences of opinion on that. There's a Samsung that's more expensive than this by a little on the Target with your provider deal that I was looking at, which happens to be through TrackPhone. It may be lower costs on some other provider. I don't know yet. But you can compare two phones there on that website. So you can put in the two you're looking at and get comments. And I found if you just do that, this versus that, and just put it into, for me, DuckDuckGo, it came up very quickly with a lot of independent analyses as well.
Right, because my excuse me, my current phone is a Samsung that I purchased from T-Mobile. The model was introduced July of 2020, and I purchased the phone in September of that year. The last software update that it received from Samsung/T-Mobile, wherever it comes from, was March of 23. So this phone pretty much wasn't even supported for 2.5 years. And as far as Samsung goes, I'm not happy about it.
I left that point out. It's an important point. Unlocked phones, I believe you can just get Android operating system updates forever. You can get a zillion add-ons forever on most any of them where the add-ons still know how to support it. Uh, but typically, I'm finding that on these reduced price locked in phone deals, you get the current, latest, greatest Android, all the updates for it forever until there aren't any more coming. And for the next release, you get that release and all the updates to it until it goes obsolete. But you don't get the third main release. That's fine for quite a few years. And we decided it was fine for our use for $60 one time. We'll get another one. And
$70.
$70, sorry. And but check it out, find out how that applies to your planned use of it. If we bought the year earlier one, it would have come with Andros 13 and a free upgrade to the new Andros 14.
Android.
And then no more. Sorry, I'm thinking of a different application. And on the other hand, the new one came with the new Android 14 and will continue to allow Android 15 to get installed and will support either one of them for as long as Android can support them with updates for the minor things. So it might last you a lot longer if you're not looking for a lot of new tricks. But $60 will last me 4 or 5 years just fine. And by the way, there's two kinds of accounts you can buy that we know about. We buy a card every so often. And for TrackPhone, there's two major flavors I know about. One is good for 30 days. You pay a flat fee, and for 30 days, all the phone time you want, and it just keeps coming with the next one. We buy, and by the way, that goes for, I believe, $30 or $35.
Per
I
month.
think. I'm not guaranteeing the answer. The one we use is quite different. It's good for 3 months, and it's not all you can use, but the amount you can use is a lot more than we need to use.
We're not online all the time, for instance.
And the rest of the time that you didn't use rolls over and accumulates. We've got thousands of hours of accumulated time. So
And
if you're a light track phone user or whoever, look at it the way we like it.
and you can set it up to use Wi-Fi for phone calls and data use.
When you're on any Wi-Fi you can
And
attach to.
So, and that doesn't charge you against the number of cell minutes that you've got.
So
Okay, yeah, because my current plan with T-Mobile, I've got unlimited talk and text, 5 gigabytes of data. It's perfect for me because my phone is on Wi-Fi roughly 90% of the time anyway.
Mhm.
But lately I have had this issue where if it's on Wi-Fi calling, the call never comes in. I get all of a sudden I'll get the voicemail notification on the screen. And with the text messaging, I have no issues receiving them, but sending them, the messages tend to time out. And that was using the original Samsung Messages app, which I understand is no longer supported. So I put the Google Messages app on the phone and I get the same thing with that. So I turned the phone off, pulled the SIM card out, left it out for 10, 15 minutes, thinking maybe something might reset, put it back in. There's been an improvement in the number of timeouts, but it's still timing out. So I don't know if it's the phone or if it's the SIM card, which is only 4 years old.
Well, we're obviously using a different carrier and different service, so I'm not sure whether it's related to the service or whether it's related to the phone itself.
Or the latest stress on the phone lines.
Well, yeah, there is no phone line. So
well, there is effectively. How many servers are lagging how badly out there?
Yeah, this morning I wasn't able to get into part of our Discover account. It just kept timing out. And I went through a different connection on their site and it worked fine.
So there's a random set of servers that are getting chained together for any given call. And if one of them's running slow, overloaded, and hasn't registered in properly about that, you'll get assigned to it, drag it down a little slower, and you'll complain about it. There's been a lot of that going around in the last month. Extra heat apparently has been causing a lot of that trouble. So we shall see. But anyway, those two different flavors of usage will play very differently for different users. So check them both out for whatever you're choosing when it's time to choose. I had a question, comment. There have been some very denigrating reports on this phone that I think were total baloney now that we've actually tested it. One was the screen resolution was kind of disappointing. Oh no, and I'm talking used to high res on everything but my phone. This one, I can see the details in the long distance, the building windows 2 miles away in the background, that sort of thing. I'm stunned by how good it is, and I don't understand their comments. Maybe I set it up right and they did not. Another big comment was track phone, not Motor. No, I think they said Motorola loads it with persistent advertising. And they pretend to know what advertising you want when the answer, of course, is none. And my experience has been we hit two programs that were default loaded that absolutely had that complaint. One of them was their camera program. It looked really nice. And but loaded with ads and other stuff. And I don't want to keep my stuff up online with them. I want to keep it up on my own account and let friends share it and others when they wish. But keep all the rest of my data off of Android. So simple, I switched to Photox. You can do that with about every program they were complaining about. There are good alternatives. And that makes it a super duper choice.
You're able to use Photox on the phone?
I'm sorry, I'm using Open Camera on the phone as I've been doing, and it's a great match with Photox on the Linux. So I think there's going to be good answers for just about anything. There's many, many thousands of options of apps to put aboard. My question that I'd like to ask is for me as a beginner with one kind of app. Does anyone have good apps to recommend for Android phones that I can duplicate or synchronize with nicely on a Linux computer for calendar?
He's using Thunderbird calendar.
I want to add a piece of data in my calendar on either one and have it show up on the other.
Go look at Evernote.
Evernote?
Yeah, I've been using Evernote for years,
Thank you.
and I converted from the Palm Pilot to Evernote. And Evernote is a web-based app, and they recently introduced a calendar, but I have not used their calendar because I use Google Calendar for all my stuff. But I would look at that, and so you could have your calendar on your Android or on your PC. It's web-based on the PC.
Uh,
Good.
but,
Evernote.
well, wait a minute. It's web-based. So if you're out of reach of a Wi-Fi, you're not going to be able to see it.
Oh, I don't care. As soon as I get home, I'll be in reach.
Okay.
But is it available? Do you use it on Linux?
Oh yeah,
Evernote.
Great, both ways. Super. And you don't have to
it,
put it. You don't have to put it on their website, right?
no, it's I put
Excellent.
well, it's in the cloud, so your data is going to any data you have on Evernote is going to be in a cloud. But there are alternatives to it that I did research a few years ago, and I can post that online if you want.
Yes,
Did you
please.
post that to discuss the question to discuss, and I will see if I can answer that.
Wonderful. Thanks. One more reason this is a great group to belong to.
Discuss. You're talking about NatickFOSS. Discuss. Yes.
Yes.
Hot hardware. Good grief. Hot internet. Non-Google search engines are blocked from showing recent Reddit results. I'm not sure what that is, but I think this was maybe Ed who added this one.
Yeah, that's an okay. Yeah, that's an article I found. I'm not sure of the reasons other than without a Reddit deal, but if you're using a search engine other than Google and you're trying to get results from Reddit, it sounds like nothing's going to come up.
Okay. I missed some of your response, but it sounded like you said that Bing and others of that sort don't do a good Reddit search anymore because of the updated robots text files. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. We'll have to see if that turns out to be a bigger deal than just this one moment. ISPs are balking at the low income pricing for broadband internet being offered with a government imposed plan. They have fought against having the plan implemented the way it is, arguing that the government is setting prices and therefore that's not an appropriate following of the law that's in place. Did you have more to say on this one too, Ed?
Well, I think pretty much what this stems from is the quote unquote expiration of a program that got started sometime in 2021 that for low income folks, it provided a monthly credit on their broadband bill. I believe it was like $30 a month. And the program, and I put expiration in quotes because the program ran out of money in May. And I don't know if there's any going to be another attempt in Congress to add money to it at this point, possibly down the road, and anything can happen. And I guess they were asking the ISPs to introduce a a low income tier or a low cost tier, but it's obvious that the ISPs, they don't want to do that.
The whole point of government is to provide service that the private sphere does not want to. And when you set laws that put things that are government service so that they are in the hands of private enterprise, you're giving the chance for private enterprise to agree or disagree. And there's always going to be a conflict between what's a government process and a government service and what isn't. Okay, I hear hands going up, so I'm going to see who they were. That's Jill and Dick. Go ahead, Jill and Dick.
We'll be Dick and Jill for this one. Uh, I think this is a very important question. In the U.S., don't understand we're about the last country not to provide essentials to everyone, and that means giving them out for free or at a lower cost to those who need that. This is not a communist issue. All of Europe does it, etc., etc. And I would propose that, like food and medical care and a roof over your head, that internet now qualifies for that. That might be the only debatable issue here for the Democrats. But the Democrats, until election time, I think cannot pass it without Republican approval. And the Republican politicians simply have been hired by very profitable corporations who no longer have to pay the proper tax rate, etc. And they've also hired a con man for president once, and they're trying to do it again. So I think it can't be done until election. I think it will be done if one side wins, and I think it won't be done if the other side wins. I agree with what Aldot said earlier.
Okay, and going back to our list here, we get now into computer security, privacy, and freedom. There's a new feature in Firefox 128.
Now you have to say it was turned off.
Sorry.
And it is called Privacy Preserving Attribution. I'm not sure it's a great idea personally. It means that advertisers can find out that their ads worked without knowing who they worked for. I suppose that's better than third-party cookies littering all over the place, which say, oh, well, third-party cookie, they bought that appliance, they must want more of that appliance. So we'll send them notes about the same thing for, $10 more. Well, let's make it $20 more. I don't know. But theoretically, this can be turned off if you don't like the experimental feature. And I looked it up and I've lost the link to what turns it off, and I'll check back and make sure that that gets into the notes for the final version of the agenda that comes out after the meeting. Has anybody else encountered this one?
I did encounter it, but I didn't encourage it. Again, I think it's something that just plain should be delivered to those who want it. Security shouldn't be something you have to pay extra for. I understand there are companies that want to make money by misusing your information. I don't think that's a good argument.
Okay, we have changes urgently needed before enacting the UN Cybercrime Treaty. This, I
Yep.
think, is Dick's again.
Yes.
Try to make it short.
What?
The time is getting late.
Oh, Jill points out there's not that much time left. This one's a quickie, but a biggie. I think you can read the link. That's one good starter one on it. And the bottom line is, like a lot of the House and Senate agreements in the US lately, when they all agree on something, go look for the holes in it, like malware entry points. This one's riddled with them, and good people will show you how many. Read it, and if you like to get involved in things politically, or just send a donation to a group that does, this is a big one. That's it.
We like the UN, but not for everything it does. Okay, crowd. Excuse me.
This is what they were able to get passed, like the U.S. House Senate lockup at the moment. It's not a good one.
Okay, back to the list here. We've just come through the results of the CrowdStrike event, with hundreds of airplanes being grounded because they couldn't sign up for any information because the Windows computers that ran their equipment were hit with a blue screen of death caused by inadequate quality control, which it turns out really meant they pushed a small update or some size update that broke the Windows that ran all those systems that CrowdStrike security software was supposed to protect against. And all of a sudden, nobody could do anything with their computer systems. Not at your level and mine, not a user problem, but all the big companies that wanted this protection for their security. And they've determined that it would have been better to roll it out as a small test group to see how many people might have been damaged by the update, and then fix the update on those small number of people. But apparently they took a shortcut and pushed to hundreds of systems instead of just tens of systems or twos of systems. And the result was at least a week of terrible problems. And Bob also has a lessons learned from CrowdStrike that he'd like to add in his comments.
Yeah, there's actually a pair of articles there, and these are just recommendations for preparedness for disaster. One of them comes from what used to be Windows Secrets newsletter, but it's a free article, and it's from one of their experts on computer security and how individuals and businesses can prepare for disasters. And the other one is just a more general article on mostly how businesses, but also individuals, should be preparing for disasters. And one of the takeaway lessons is to consider, can you diversify your vendors for these back-end systems? Can you have a fallback? IT is viewed by most of the companies that use these outsourced services as a cost center, which means it isn't something they want to invest a lot of money in. And so anything that's going to cost money, you have to be able to justify. One of these articles, I think it's the first one, discusses how to present the value case to the executives in your company and get them interested in giving some funding to this. That's about all I've got. You can follow the links and get a whole lot more.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, and you also had the CDK. That was your second comment. eBay and its ex-officers are apparently on the hook for
Yeah.
cyber stalking.
We skipped one, didn't we?
This
No.
one,
Okay. Let's see. Again, a quickie, but it's right at home. And to me, it was a surprise. I thought eBay was one of the more reliable places to go looking for things to buy online. I've got a lot that I thought were a lot less reliable. But some recent officers in the company,
A couple of years ago.
they were bounced because of this after they paid a big fine, were actually harassing a family in Natick. I think this is just a stunner.
His
Well,
husband,
hats off to eBay for kicking them out, but and hats off to the police action at various levels that resulted in finding out who was doing what to whom. So I don't like being spied upon, but I like that
it
this
had
action was spied upon and taken care of. You can read about it. It's on the link. And there's a lot of other links on this one.
it had nothing to do with selling or buying things. It was a couple who wrote a review of eBay and had some bad things to say about them. And these officers at eBay decided that they needed to get them to post a retraction, and they said hell no. And so they did things like send a bazillion things to them. Actually, I think one of the things I don't think they sent it by eBay, but they left a severed pig's head on their front doorstep. I mean, really gross things.
not nice.
No.
It's just an amazing story. And I'll just point out that in eBay's advertising department, I'm sure they do think it had everything to do with selling and buying. Those comments, the recommendations. So it depends on what perspective. Anyway, it's a good read, and I can imagine it's not the only one that ever happened, but this one was in our backyard.
And you have next one.
Yep.
The next one I thought was very interesting. Our computers have a
Wait a minute.
in between the G, H, and B keys, right above the space bar.
Wait a minute. Let me get it.
Can you get it where you see it?
Maybe.
Anyway,
It's hard
that's
to
a
see.
track point, and these are HP Elite books, which has a lot of nice features. Not the only ones that do, and you can just lean on it. It doesn't really travel as much as you put a little pressure against it, and your cursor moves around the screen and can do some other nice things.
He's talking about the little button.
Yes, that touch point. And my point is you can do that with the normal touchpad. But the normal touchpad, when I'm working on photos, particularly I want to catch a high resolution photo by doing a print screen on what's on my high resolution screen. I can get a better copy of it than most computers can because of the high-res screen. But there's a catch. On the touchpad, it jumps maybe an inch or so on the screen for each little motion.
This is
The
for
track
scrolling.
point, touch points, whatever you call it on a different brand, goes much more gradually. It lets it coast so I can make a bigger image of it and coast it so it just almost fills the screen. I have to make a smaller image to do that if it hops an inch at a time. And I want those extra pixels. So it's a great solution if I can move that image with the pointing stick. Answer is you can. Answer is no operating system I've been using can. Answer is every operating system I've been using can, if you find the right secret from the many different recipes I found online. That's why I told you what computer and
Which
and what
Linux?
version of Linux I found a great solution for. It may work for all of them. I haven't spent the time trying, but it was fine for the Ubuntu Unity. It was fine for plain Ubuntu, and it's fine for Linux Mint Cinnamon.
And is this a link to it?
Yeah, this is a link to the solution that helped me. And if it isn't everything you need, let me know. I'll see. I have a lot of other links I can suggest that weren't the win for me. What I do now is I simply press both uh, of the buttons by my touchpad, the forward and backward one, if you will, and I punch right, they come right to each other. They touch each other. I just poke right there. So I'm pressing with one finger on both of them. And poof, I've enabled that trick on the touch point. It's lovely for my solution. And there's a bunch of other solutions out there. I hope I've led you to them. If I haven't for something you're using, I probably have some other clues from maybe the 20 links I looked through before I found this easy one for me.
All right. Thank you, Dick.
Sure.
We have another secure boot question, and it was discussed on the NatickFOSS Discuss mailing list, which I might point out as we look at this option, at this current topic link. A lot of good discussion happens on that discussion list. This comment is to those who might be watching who are not members of the list, but want to know how some of the things that we talk about get into our list. The NatickFOSS Discuss list is described on our homepage. So if you want to get in on the inside during a month, we talk about a lot of these things together in email because the list provides us that connection. So if you want to check your computer to find out if it has that, there is a bit of discussion about how to do that on the discuss list. And as we are nearing the end of our hour, our second hour, our wonderful second hour, I hope, we want to get quickly into the last area. Artificial intelligence strikes again. Bob, you had something to tell us about the sequence of events around a CDK attack?
I think I would like for that not to be handled this month due to lack of time. We should
That
probably
sounds
push
fair.
it over. And it's just basically a very humorous thing that happened.
Yep. And the last couple of items are together. The NVIDIA Blackwell Data Center GPU processor was announced back in March, I think, with some fanfare at the time because it's very, very powerful. But somebody has made note that that processor, which typically is in use in clusters of 8, requires 15 kilowatt per cluster. 15 kilowatts. That's like running 8 full high energy hair dryers. 1,875 watts per GPU. And that's for data centers running things like ChatGPT and other, I'm not sure we need them, kind of uses. All of this requires a huge amount of water to cool. I don't know whether with these processors are worth it to the world. We already overheat things as it is. So I'd hope that you would get a chance to look at these and make your own judgment about their value before you go out and recommend some data center start using them. And we wind up with junk mail from Jill. You had that as a request this month, and also the question and answers whether Linux users can recommend. Oh no, Dick, you asked that
We
one
got
earlier.
Pat next.
Yep.
I'll pass on this month. It's just mostly amusing.
Well, except to people that don't know yet. But yeah, it could keep. If there's questions and answers, might be better.
All right. Anybody have wrap-up comments that they want to make
Yeah,
in the last 6 minutes or so?
Yeah, I just sent some mail out on discuss about the calendars. Dick, I think what you want in the calendar is a calendar app that syncs on your Linux PC but does not reside on someone else's cloud.
Yes.
Yeah, because Google Calendar and a few other calendars are great that way, but Thunderbird is being implemented on Linux, like K9 Mail. I sent the URL on Discuss, and that may possibly be your future solution. It's not available yet.
Oh, hold your breath. Hurry up and wait.
Well, if what the Army was like that, why not Linux?
The year of the Linux desktop. Hurry up and wait. Yes. We've heard that one before.
Hey,
Well,
I'm going
my
to install
friends,
the NVIDIA GPU.
The fact
Mhm.
that I'm looking for one thing like that is good news for Linux. Could be looking for 50.
Mm-hmm. Linux is an ecosystem, not just a kernel for an operating system. We love it. We want it to be the best possible thing for all use cases. And we keep pushing the envelope outward. It's getting to be a bigger and bigger envelope. And more people actually seem to be using it. And that makes this group happy. And we love talking about it on a monthly basis. So tune in next in September. I'll see you in September. I remember that song. I'm sorry.
And
But
remember, it's the second Thursday in September.
that's correct. That is because we always try to work around the vacation opportunities of things like the 4th of July and Labor Day and the beginning of every new year with our holidays there. So September is one of our second weeks, second Thursdays of the month. not our first. This was definitely our first of August. Thank you all for your comments, for your information, and I look forward
Okay.
to reviewing this on the, oh, yes, Joe.
Sorry, you reminded me of something, and that is I see several opportunities to run a FOSS demo table at local events. I'm looking at least one, maybe two each in Natick and Framingham. If there's interest, I thought it'd be good to bring it up now for people that won't be in the board discussion to see if we have people that would like to exhibit. I'd give some time if other people wanted to do it too. And
Good.
they might be interesting groups of visitors to look.
This would be a good thing to put into the general discuss list
I'll
as
provide
opposed
that.
to simply the board list, which actually gets
Yes.
used for behind the scenes kind of things. This would
Well,
definitely be
let me just ask while we're on, are there others who might want to participate this
I
month?
think it's this month between now and September.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, conceivably, but put it on the
Okay.
discuss list for
Or it's
what
worth
events
discussing,
and
then
when.
I'll do it. Good.
Okay. I'm going to say I appreciate again that everybody was here, and thank you all for your participation, and for those that were waiting for this as a recorded session. Enjoy when you can. See you in September.
Okay, bye, everybody.